Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, how the heck are ya? There has been a little bit of a shift in the recording schedule. Jen and I have both had a lot of things going on, and we have not been able to record together. We normally are about 6 weeks ahead of recording, and we have a nice bank of episodes, and now we got pretty much nothing. We are both fine. We've just had a lot going on. I have a feeling that what's going to happen is this will be a follow-up to episode 182, where I talk about my son joining the Navy. I have a minor update, but nothing significant. I do want to talk about, we did end up putting Gracie down. And I want to talk about what this grief journey has been like. If you're already, your hackles are up and you're like, nope, don't want to listen to it, totally understand. I think that it is possible to go through the grieving process in a way that feels honoring, and I have felt more supported. And I feel like this is the most, for lack of a better word, mature way that I've ever been able to grieve before. Have I had sad days? You bet. Last Monday was a big sad day. And this morning, I don't know, I was in the living room doing something and I turned around and reflexively just wanted to check where Gracie was. And it caught me off guard and I just cried. And it's okay. And then we went ahead and did some things that we needed to do. And I have not been able to record just because my energy has been so low. And then this afternoon, I had room to record a little bit. We'll see how organized this is. My tentative plan, and this could change, is I'm wanting to repurpose all of Lindsay Gibson's episodes about adult children of emotionally immature parents. We did some episodes on boundaries, how to identify a healthy relationship. We did 1 or 2 episodes on how to get through the holidays, but I think the information in there is relevant to any time of the year. And what I would like is to have all of our episodes that we've recorded so far in a chunk. So when people are interested in looking at her stuff, they don't have to sort through. We have over 200 episodes, I think close to 300 episodes now. So tentatively, starting next week, we're going to have a handful of weeks of all Dr. Gibson's episodes. And hopefully in that time, it will give Jen and I a chance to start recording again. Life happens. We're taking care of ourselves. We need to do the best job that we can. But what you can expect in this episode is a little bit of the story about what happened with Gracie. I don't think there's anything that's disturbing in this. I'm not going to talk about anything graphic. I am going to talk about what support has looked like to me. You may get some great ideas for how to support people. You know, I'm a therapist and a coach, and people have shown me how to support somebody when they're grieving. I'll give you some specifics and some tangibles. Talk about how I'm managing what I do on the days that are hard, what I do on the days that are easy, how I've kind of ritualized some ways to honor and commemorate, memorialize Gracie. I think this is stuff that we need to talk about. And I know that people often feel very, very alone when they lose a pet. So my hope is that this will be a helpful episode. And if not, then I don't know. It's not. Steve and I had set a date where we were going to put Gracie down. And it just became more and more evident that we really needed to move the date up, which we did. My son Daniel was planning to come home on a Saturday so he could say goodbye to Gracie. And for a number of reasons that I'm not going to go into, I spoke with him the day before and asked how it would be for him if he didn't get a chance to see her. He FaceTimed with Gracie. It was very, very sweet. I did not make a unilateral decision. It was important that he felt okay with it. And coincidentally, the day that we had scheduled to put Gracie down, my other son, Josh, and his girlfriend, Tori, planned to come to San Diego and stay with us. They asked if it was okay. I said, I have no idea what kind of shape I'm going to be in this weekend. I might be in my room. I might be crying all weekend. Are you okay with that? They were fine with it. So they came down that day. We had a time that we were going to take Gracie. My good friend Laura, I just sent her a text to let her know She wanted to come and say goodbye to Gracie. So she came over and got to hold Gracie. My other friend, Jean, when I talked to her the next day, had said she had wanted to ask if she could come say goodbye to Gracie, but she didn't want to be intrusive. And Laura had also said the same thing, like, please feel free to say no if you don't want to. And it really felt very honoring for me. So Laura and I were visiting. She was holding Gracie. It was time for us to leave. Josh and Tori showed up. And when Laura handed Gracie over to me, that's when the tears came. And normally what I do is I stuff my tears. That's how I was raised, to not allow anybody to hear me cry. And as I carried Gracie to the van, I just cried. And what I did differently this time was I really allowed myself to feel and experience the things that I loved about Gracie, the things that I was going to miss about Gracie. I talked to her the whole time in the van. I cried. Gracie is such a mellow dog that she never gets stressed going to the vet. The way she lies, if you've seen any pictures of her with her head flopping over my arm, she looks like a little rag doll. The vet was incredibly helpful. And one of the things that the vet had asked us, because we met with the vet a few days earlier, talking about quality of life, and this was very, very pivotal for us. The vet had asked, tell me 10, 20 things that Gracie likes. It's like, well, she likes being held. She likes eating. She likes going on walks. But she doesn't play anymore. She doesn't engage very much. She's very loving, but really doesn't do a lot. And then the vet asked us, how much dogging does she do? And really, Gracie doesn't do any dogging. You know, it's been years since she's been playful and could catch a ball or could engage with Maisie, who's not really a puppy anymore, but she's a year and a couple months. Maisie loves treats. She loves seeing her dog friend. She loves catching the ball. She loves having us throw her toys for her. She is very, very engaged, and she loves smelling and finding things and hunting. And we do a lot of dogging with Maisie. And that was something that Steve and I talked about in the few days after we saw the vet, that really Gracie was not doing a lot of dogging anymore. This whole subject is very, very subjective. And I'm just sharing our experience. And this is not to guilt anybody. It's really to just have another way to look at quality of life. We went to the vet. It was sad. We both cried. We cried on the way home. It was nice having Josh and Tori here. It was kind of a nice distraction. And then Daniel got here late, I think in the middle of the night, that he works and he gets off late. So he came down. So the kids were here for the weekend. It really was nice to have that support. Now, the night that we put Gracie down, Maisie, the other dog, was up all night long, which is very unusual. Her stomach was making noises. She was sick. She'd been sick a few days prior to this. We thought that she'd been getting better. It was really terrible. And at about 4:30 in the morning, I had decided that I was going to take her to the emergency vet. And so I got her out to the car. I called the emergency vet. They told me they couldn't see her, but they told me another place to go to, and that they could see her. I drove to this other place. I pull up. It's probably 5 a.m. I haven't slept at all that night. It doesn't look like an emergency vet. And I call, and they're not taking pets. And they referred me to the place where Gracie had the neurologist. So I called them, and they told me it would be a 5 to 6 hour wait. And they were kind enough to describe the tragic things that they were treating that would make my dogs not a priority. We turned around and came home. And by this time, I think I went back to bed, and maybe Steve got up a little bit later. I do water fitness, and Josh and Tori were going to come to water fitness with me on Saturday. So what I did was, the few places that we could take Maisie to on Saturday didn't open till 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning. So I tasked my husband with making some phone calls to make an appointment for her. And Josh and Tori and I went to Aqua Fitness. It was nice to see my friends. It was nice to move, even though I was operating on very little sleep. And Steve was able to get an appointment at an urgent care clinic. In the meantime, we've been working with this trainer, Jan, who was a vet tech in the past. And I had picked up a piece of equipment for her that she could use for dog training. And it had been sitting in my living room for so long that I didn't even see it anymore. So I happened to notice it and I let her know that it was here and she was in the neighborhood. So she stopped by to pick it up. She knew that we were going to be putting Gracie down. Of course, when I saw her, I started sobbing. And she was able to take a look at Maisie because I was concerned about Maisie. She called a few vets that she knows to see if anybody could get her in that day. They couldn't. I did get Maisie into the vet. Thank goodness for pet insurance. Turns out they couldn't find anything. There was something in her stomach, but the vet thought that it would be taken care of. They gave her IV fluids. Well, I guess it's not IV. They gave her the camel hump fluid injection. If you know, you know. And they gave her some stronger meds and I took her home. And in the next couple of days, she did clear up and she was fine. I didn't stress so much about Maisie being sick, but I was concerned that she was in so much discomfort and I really, really needed sleep. Some of the ways that people showed up for me in the next couple weeks, because it's been 2 weeks and a few days now. I can't tell you how many people have brought me flowers. The neurologist, I did send, I can't remember if I said this in the last episode or not, but I called all of the vets, all the places where we get prescriptions for Gracie and asked them to please don't send reminders about vaccines or prescriptions. She's no longer with us. And I let the neurologist know that while the medication changes did control the seizures, we think it may have affected quite a few things with her, but it was a very kind note. They sent flowers. Our neighbors, Melissa and Christian, brought flowers by. Our neighbors, Janine, brought flowers by. Laura ended up bringing up an orchid. In the meantime, Jean had a keychain made that has a picture of Gracie on it. Jen sent me this candle with this prayer that has Gracie's name on it. My friend Melissa has sent me something, but it hasn't arrived yet. And I got a stone that has Gracie's name on it and paw prints. It hasn't arrived yet. Oh, and our neighbors Annie and Joel gave us this 3-pack of succulents. They're just beautiful. It was really lovely having active reminders of Gracie all throughout the house on my keychain, things that are going to keep her close to me. 2 of the things that were the most helpful were I made if you're on TikTok, or I don't know if I put the second one on Instagram or not. I did not. But on TikTok at unapologeticallysensitive.com. Oh, maybe it's HSP therapist. I'm sorry. I don't know. If you look in the show notes, it should have whatever my TikTok handle is. Or if you go to my website at unapologeticallysensitive.com, there's a little icon for TikTok. But I did 2 sets of pictures to music of Gracie. And what I would do at night generally was I would get into bed, and when it was quiet, I would watch these montages with music and just cry. And often in the morning, I would wake up and cry. It really was very, very healing. And it seemed to help, I don't want to say manage the grief, but those were just times when it really seemed to be helpful for me to focus on my grief. And then during the day, I, for the most part, was focused on things that I needed to do. I did have the online HSP course that I teach the first Monday after we put her down. I think somebody asked because a few people in the group knew that I had put her down and asked how I was doing. And I got tearful, was concerned I was going to overwhelm people in the group. I did a check-in. They said it was fine. I was able to kind of pull it together, but I was impacted and affected. It's just how it is. And I've really had to honor my need. It feels like my window of tolerance is very, very small. And I went through a very sad stage, and then I went through a very irritable stage. I'm not sure what stage I'm in now, but I've made a decision that things with groups of people don't work for me right now. Doing an ocean paddle right now doesn't work for me. If Brenda and I went out alone, then that would be fine. But I'm not doing group paddles right now. Haven't been out in the ocean for a while. It's been cold. It's been rainy here. There have been a number of reasons why I haven't been paddling as much as I used to. But part of it also just feels overwhelming. And I've gone through these periods before with paddling where it feels like it's a lot, and I don't do it. I've been going to aqua fitness. I've been hanging out with another group of women friends that I have. Jean has been incredibly supportive. Laura was texting and checking in with me. Jen would FaceTime with me. I mean, I really have felt incredibly held and loved and supported through this. And I think in those montages that I made of Gracie, it really helped remind me of the quality of the relationship that I had with her, as opposed to missing the object that gave me comfort and not having an object that gives me comfort anymore. And if you're processing any grief and that's what your experience is, I'm not implying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that historically, that has been how it's been for me. And this time I'm really missing just the sweetness of her and having her around, and what a beautiful companion she was, and how she was with me for so many hard times, just there and present. And I miss that. I really do. The other thing that's really interesting is that Maisie has changed a little bit with her having all this indigestion and problems with her GI tract. We had to change what we were feeding her, how we were feeding her. And I put a little bit of food in Gracie's bowl and she refused to eat out of it. So I had to change out the water bowl, and I just don't use Gracie's dish for her. We had a lot of medication because I don't like running out, because it's seizure medication and I don't ever want to be without. I would usually make sure that I had backup before we ran out. And of course, we'd refilled a bunch of this medication. So we were able to donate all of her medication. We had a lot of harnesses, her bedding, clothing. We were able to donate all of that so that other dogs can appreciate that. People that can't afford medication will have access to some pricey medication. But it's interesting that Maisie can be very aloof, and she has come to sleep on the bed with me a few times. She the day after we put Gracie down, Maisie was on the bed with me, and it was just what I needed, because I thought, what's it going to be like to wake up without having Gracie by my side in the morning? And Maisie came up on the bed in the morning, and it was just beautiful. She's very mercurial about where she sleeps, and sometimes she sleeps in the back of the house, sometimes she's in my room, sometimes she's in the front of the house. And I've learned to be okay with that, but she's been much more social and much more engaged. And a few people have said that they wonder if there wasn't room for Maisie, because Gracie was always on my lap or with me. And maybe there just wasn't room for her. It's just very interesting to see how she's changing and growing. It's also possible because she's growing up and she's an adolescent now, dog-wise, just to see how she is. And then there was also a part of me that in the midst of all this sadness, I kind of felt relief in all of the things that I realized that we never did because of Gracie. We don't rearrange the furniture. I never closed the bathroom door because she would try and walk in and find me. We never had a coffee table because it would be an obstacle for her to bump into. We can actually get a Roomba now if we want, because it would have been cruel to have a Roomba with my blind dog. And then it was interesting. The weekend that Josh and Tori were here, Josh had his shoes on the floor. And I said, Josh, I was going to ask you to move your shoes because we didn't want Gracie to trip over them, and then realized, oh, we don't have to do that. Not having to do medication 3 times a day. We were doing it 5 times a day. Not having to come home at 7 o'clock because Gracie needed medication. I mean, there are some things that are very freeing. And as I often tell you, I've got 2 hands with my palms up in front of me. And one is kind of the relief of the things that we have freedom from now. And the other one is the heaviness of the grief and the sadness. And both of those things can occur at the same time. It doesn't have to be exclusively one or the other. The other thing that is really interesting is probably a little bit over a week after we put Gracie down. And then on Monday, I had, just like I said, a big sad day. I don't know what it was. I was supposed to have lunch with some friends, and I texted, we have a group chat, and I said, I am just too sad to go with y'all today to celebrate Karen's birthday, and I am really sorry. It was so nice that the group understood, and I didn't feel like I had to make excuses. I was able to just be very honest about what was going on. The next morning on Tuesday, I was walking the dog, and my mom was having some health issues that she told me about. And I remember telling a friend, it's a little bit too much right now. I'm just going to put it on a shelf, because I just, with this sense of not being very resilient right now and trying to manage a lot of dysregulation. And I felt okay about that. The previous Friday, my husband, Steve, was either putting on his shoes, taking off his shoes, changing his pants, something like that. He felt dizzy, and the next thing he knew, he woke up on the ground and he bruised his tailbone. On Tuesday, he went to the doctor. They wanted to send him to the ER where they had all the imaging equipment because they were very concerned. And we only had one car that week. Steve had it. I didn't have it. They wanted me to go pick him up. He'd been driving. He said he felt fine. I'm usually the one that's very conservative about, you need to see the doctor. You need to do this. You can't do that. I had plans to have breakfast with some girlfriends that morning. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a way to get to him. And he felt comfortable driving to the ER. But I had the opposite of I'm neglectful. I'm not caring for him. I should figure out a way to get to him. Just very interesting. They couldn't find anything with him. He does have a follow-up with a cardiologist. My mom has had a couple. They're called TIAs, that trans ischemic attack. And sometimes they just happen and we don't know why they happen. But because that had happened on the heels of this thing with my mom, and my mom needed to get an Apple Watch, and she's not great with technology, and usually the responsibility falls on me, it just felt like a lot. I also had this agreement with my son Josh, who's going into the military, that I would keep him updated on information about Graham. So as I was finishing up my walk that morning, I called him just to give him an update. And I said, there's some things about Graham's and Dad I need to tell you. And when I got to the part about Steve, I started crying. I didn't want him to worry. I said, there's nothing scary about Dad. I think I'm just feeling very overwhelmed, and it's feeling like a lot of things to manage because I still had clients to see. I'm managing my own grief. Now my mom needs to get an Apple Watch, and then I need to set it up for her, and then I need to show her how to use it. And it's not that it's a burden. It just, my capacity was pretty limited. And bless Josh's heart, he's like, do you want me to come down? He just quit his job. The update for him in the Navy is they needed to get his medical records. They finally got them. He dropped them off this morning, 300, 500 pages worth of medical records. So it's going to be a few weeks until we know. He's really concerned that he's not going to get in because he saw a pulmonologist when he was a child. And by elementary school, he no longer saw the pulmonologist. And he has a diagnosis of ADHD. When both of my kids went off to college, they both decided they didn't want to take meds anymore, and they've been able to manage fine without being on medication. And it's been, I think, almost 4 years or over 4 years now. But the Navy needs to look at that and see the last time they got his prescriptions. And so Josh is feeling very tentative. He quit his job because he's going to be training with the military. He had to go see the recruiter. There were things to do. And his job is very, very strict about missing work. And he didn't want to get fired, so he quit. Anyways, Josh offers to come down, which means that would take the burden off of me if he needs anything to do to help my husband. We only had one car. He'd be able to go get the watch for my mom. I did ask him that morning, can you, look up the Apple Watches and find out which one's the best to get? So bless his heart, he said he'd come down, and I just felt such a sense of relief. If you listen to the episode when I broke my wrist almost 2 years ago, he was at work at the time. Steve was in Laughlin. Daniel was here, but Daniel couldn't get on base. Josh offered to come down, and I said, no, it'll be fine. I had plans to have lunch with my friend Jean I thought, I'm going to get a little cast. I'll go to lunch. It was so much more complicated. And Josh drove down after he got off work to San Diego, showed up at the hospital, and I just cried when I saw him. He has such a strong presence. He and I both have this very strong presence. It's incredibly calming to be around, and Josh is just very grounding for me. I love my other son, Daniel. Daniel has a lot of things to offer, but when I'm very dysregulated, Josh is just incredibly calming for me to be around. So he offered to come down. I said, great. And then he called back and he said that he and his girlfriend would be down. They'd be both coming down. And I was not expecting that. And this was really challenging. I love his girlfriend. I love having her around. And in this very dysregulated space that I was in, Josh would be very calming. Having an extra person here just adds too much to the mix, and I could not handle it. And I told him, that wasn't what I was expecting. Can you give me 30 minutes to just kind of sit with this to see if I can kind of reshape my head around it? The last time they were here, my mom had a list of things that she needed help with. I asked them if they would handle it. His girlfriend had amazing suggestions for my mom. She's great with my mom. So I want to be very clear. I love her. It just felt like a lot. And I went to breakfast with my friends. Somebody picked me up, and then I looked, Josh and I, our family, we have find my friends on iPhone, and I looked and Josh was on his way down. And so I assumed that he came down without his girlfriend. And when he got here and we talked about it, I said, how damaging is this going to be? Because his girlfriend doesn't have, her family just stinks. That's just all I'm going to say. She looks to us as family. And so she was coming as a family member to be with the family, to provide support to the family. And basically, it's like me taking a little finger and flicking her away, going like, you're not family, you can't be here. Which is not where I was coming from. It was coming from a place of, I'm really dysregulated. Josh is calming for me. That's all I have room for. I hear you want to be here, just not this time. And he said it might be some time before she gets over it. She will forgive me, but it was pretty significant. So we go down to the exchange. We get an Apple Watch for my mom. We come home. We start to set it up. Her phone is so old that the watch won't sync with the phone. And now we need to get my mom a new phone. And I have clients. This is all while I have to see clients throughout the day. Thank goodness Josh found something from my mom. He takes my mom to go get a new phone. He sets up the watch. It's great. I text his girlfriend right away. I told Josh I totally understood where she was coming from. My heart felt sad. That wasn't it wasn't my intention to hurt her feelings. And when we went to go get my mom the Apple Watch, they had all the Easter display set up. And I had told Josh, we have this family vacation coming up and we normally get all the grown kids and their partners Easter baskets. And I said, we're not going to do it this year because 2 of the kids are eating healthy, but his girlfriend loves candy. So do I. And so I said, I want to get your girlfriend an Easter basket. And he asked if I was feeling pressured or obligated. And I'm like, absolutely not. I feel sad that, she feels hurt and angry and disappointed that it wasn't a good time for her to come. And I just want to show my love to her. We picked out some things for her. I texted her, said, I understand if you're having these feelings. I love you. I care about you. This just wasn't a good time. I'm more than happy to hear your feelings and talk about it. Not right now, but later. And left it at that. And then that night he spoke with her and I asked how she was and should I reach out again? Should I not? He said, reach out. So I sent her a text, no response. And this was hard. It felt challenging that I was clear that I really needed to just be here by myself with Josh, and it would have been too much if she would have come. It wasn't about her, but I felt bad that she felt hurt. So I went to bed that night. And when we've talked about like spiraling the drain, this is when it started. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, and now I'm feeling powerless and I'm feeling angry. And I just watch myself spiral down, and we have this family vacation coming up, and it's like, what if we don't repair this? And she's going to be mad at me. I can't tolerate that. And I just went all kinds of places that are not very pleasant, not very rational, not very therapist-y. And I'm a human being, and there's all of this stuff going on. And this just was like the last thing that kind of made me spiral. I also, in the morning while I was still in bed, I had a huge cry. It just was bringing up so much for me. And I felt, I don't even know what the words are. I felt angry. I felt hurt. I felt like I didn't do it to hurt her. And now she's withdrawing and she's angry and she's punishing me. And if we can't do repair work, what kind of relationship are we going to have? I just spiraled. So I sent her a text. It says something to the effect of, in my life and history, silence means anger and withdrawal. I don't know what's going on with you. I'm pretty dysregulated, which is not your responsibility. But what would be helpful to me is if you can let me know what you're feeling and that you need space. And I don't know if I said anything else. I said, I understand if you're angry, hurt, disappointed. Totally makes sense. I've got room for that. And very, very shortly after that, it's funny, I took my phone off Do Not Disturb and was doing some other things, but for some reason, I must not have taken my phone off Do Not Disturb, and she responded and I didn't know. So I'm crying and I'm doing other things. And then I saw that she responded, and she said that when she gets overwhelmed, she shuts down and withdraws. And she wasn't angry, she was hurt. And we had a nice little exchange, and that just seemed to help and to reset things a little bit more for me. Josh did some more things to help my mom. The next day, I just tried to keep things pretty simple, but I kept getting triggered very easily and blindsided by things. And one morning, I think it was after Josh left, I was blow drying my hair in the bathroom, and my husband came in pretty close to me because, I was blow drying my hair and he started to talk and I turned the hair dryer off, but he was still speaking very loud and it just rattled me. I didn't say a word. I answered his question, but then he said, "What?" And then in a very, very, very loud voice, I said something like, "You were talking really loud while I was blow drying my hair and this is what it felt like." And I shocked him and he walked away. And I'm like, "Well, wait a second. We apologized, but it was not a good apology. We kind of kept our distance. He had to go out and do some errands. And then we talked and I cried. And my nervous system is just really, really sensitive right now." So we were able to work that through. But it really became clear to me that I needed to find some ways to really regulate my nervous system even more so than I had been. And I may talk about that in another episode where I could just get a little bit of a break for a couple of days. But Josh ended up going home. He sent me a video that night when he got home of his girlfriend opening the Easter basket and crying and saying she loved me. So we worked through all this stuff. And through all of these things, people have been so supportive. I've been loved and surrounded. People are checking in on me. Even on the days that are hard, I felt very connected. My hope is that you can know, if you haven't experienced this, is that we can go through really hard times. We don't have to be alone. We can be supported. We can feel relief, joy, sadness, fatigue, figuring out when do we push, when do we keep things more stable. And I'm still in that place where I need to be really mindful about, or I'm choosing to be very mindful about what I think is going to be too overstimulating for me and honoring that so that my nervous system can reset. I think this is all that I have to say. I think this has been a pretty long episode. Oh, I'm looking at the time, 32 minutes. Not so bad. I think that's all I have. If anything resonates, if you struggle with anxiety, with being sensitive, with relationships, with boundaries, obviously grief and loss, I get it. Please feel free to reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I would love to help you thrive as a sensitive, deep feeler and deep thinker. I get it. I think that's all I have. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's your superpower. Have a blessed day.